During the Cold War, intelligence agencies like the CIA were under immense pressure to train operatives quickly and effectively. These spies needed to learn foreign languages, memorize complex codes, understand enemy behaviors, and adapt to high-pressure environments, all within very limited time frames. To accomplish this, the CIA developed and refined a set of unconventional learning techniques that pushed the boundaries of traditional education. These weren't ordinary classroom lessons, they were intense, immersive, and deliberately designed to speed up the learning process while making the information stick under even the most stressful circumstances. These methods, though created for espionage, have fascinating applications for anyone wanting to learn faster, retain more, and perform better. The idea was simple. If spies could absorb enormous amounts of information under extreme pressure, maybe we could too by understanding how the brain responds to different kinds of stimuli, how memory works under duress, and how repetition, emotion, and environment shape long-term recall. These methods didn't rely on talent or intelligence. They were built around how human memory really works. And now, thanks to neuroscience and open research, many of these tactics can be adapted to everyday learning. Whether you're a student, a professional, or simply someone curious about boosting your brain power, these CIA-style techniques can help transform the way you learn. One of the most intriguing methods used by intelligence agencies to accelerate learning was based on how the brain processes information during sleep, specifically during the theta brainwave state. The theta state is a natural phase your brain enters right before you fall asleep and just as you're waking up. It's that hazy, relaxed, dreamlike moment when your mind is still aware but no longer actively analyzing or resisting information. Scientists discovered that in this state, the brain becomes highly receptive to suggestion, memory formation, and emotional imprinting. The CIA and other experimental groups realized that if new information could be introduced during this theta window, the brain might store it more deeply, bypassing the conscious filter that often rejects or forgets new material. This technique, often referred to as sleep learning, involves exposing yourself to specific knowledge like vocabulary, concepts, or even sounds just before sleep or while drifting into light sleep. The brain, instead of shutting off, continues to work behind the scenes. Audio input, like recordings of language lessons or important facts, is played softly during sleep, not to wake the person, but to subtly feed the brain while it's in a hyper-absorbent state. Over time, the brain starts linking this passive input to long-term memory without active effort. In modern terms, this could be as simple as playing a playlist of educational audio, affirmations, or lessons quietly while you lie in bed, especially after reviewing the material once or twice while awake. This pre-sleep priming reinforces what you learned during the day and gives your brain a chance to encode it more deeply. Research shows that the brain doesn't fully shut down during sleep, especially in the early stages. Instead, it reorganizes, strengthens, and replays neural patterns it encountered while awake. That's why we often dream about things we've recently seen or felt. By tapping into this natural process, sleep learning doesn't just save time, it enhances retention. For students, this could mean playing language phrases before sleep. For professionals, it might mean listening to important terminology, business strategies, or motivational affirmations. And for memory hackers, it's a way of turning rest time into learning time. Of course, this method works best when combined with conscious learning during the day. It isn't a magic shortcut, but it amplifies what you've already tried to absorb. In a way, it's like planting seeds in your mind while awake and watering them during sleep. When done consistently, the theta wave method can become a powerful part of your long-term learning toolkit, just like it was for spies trying to memorize codes and languages under extreme time pressure. One of the most unconventional yet powerful methods used by intelligence agencies like the CIA to enhance learning was rooted in an idea that seems completely counterintuitive: learning under chaos. While most people seek quiet, distraction-free environments to focus, spies were deliberately trained in environments filled with pressure, noise, and uncertainty. The reason? In the field, a spy doesn't get to choose the perfect study setting. Information has to be recalled in real time, often under extreme stress. So the brain must learn not just to absorb knowledge, but to retrieve it accurately when everything around is falling apart. The technique is called stress-based or chaos conditioning. In this method, trainees were exposed to unpredictable stimuli, alarms blaring, freezing cold rooms, loud music, people shouting while trying to study or recall important information. At first, performance would drop, but over time the brain adapted. It stopped reacting to the chaos and focused on the task. The result was a mental muscle that could retrieve information with clarity, even in the middle of a crisis. This kind of resilience training changes how your nervous system responds to pressure. Most people panic when they're overwhelmed, their heart races, their memory short-circuits, and they forget even simple facts. But when you've trained yourself to stay mentally sharp during mild forms of chaos, your brain learns how to filter out noise and stress. You develop what psychologists call cognitive control, the ability to stay focused and recall information no matter what. In practical terms, this means occasionally introducing small amounts of stress into your study routine. Try answering flashcards while listening to loud music or distracting background noise. Recite important facts while walking in a crowded place. Practice speeches or presentations in front of a mirror with your phone vibrating or notifications popping up. The goal isn't to sabotage your learning, it's to build cognitive toughness. The key is to start small. You don't need to throw yourself into panic mode. Controlled chaos, like studying with a time limit or trying to recall notes while standing on one leg, or under mild pressure, is enough to teach your brain how to stay calm and focused under pressure. Over time, this becomes second nature. CIA trainees weren't just memorizing facts, they were conditioning their brains for war zones, diplomatic deception, and sudden life-or-death decisions. They needed to recall data in loud cities, crowded bars, or tense interrogations. And so, their learning environment mirrored the real world. For you, this method can become a secret weapon, especially before exams, interviews, or high-pressure meetings. If you've trained yourself to recall knowledge under stress, then when you face the real thing, your brain doesn't freeze, it performs. That's the genius behind learning in chaos. Not to create more pressure, but to remove the fear of it. The human brain isn't just a thinking machine, it's a sensory engine. It learns, stores, and retrieves information using all five senses. Intelligence agencies realized early on that if you want information to stick, you need to tie it to more than just words or logic. You need to engage the senses. This is where the concept of neuropriming and multisensory learning comes in, a method that involves linking specific sights, sounds, smells, tastes, or physical sensations to the learning experience. When done deliberately, this creates strong neural pathways that make memory recall faster, deeper, and more reliable. Imagine this. Every time a spy was learning a new set of phrases in a foreign language, they would chew the same flavor of gum. Let's say cinnamon. Later, when they needed to recall those phrases in the field, they would pop in that same gum. The smell and taste weren't random. They acted as sensory anchors, triggering the part of the brain that stored the original memory. The result? Instant recall under pressure. This technique is backed by science. Sensory memories like smells and sounds are processed by the limbic system, the same part of the brain responsible for emotions and long-term memory. That's why a specific perfume or song can instantly transport you back to a moment from years ago. The association is emotional, and therefore much stronger than logic-based recall alone. To apply this method, start by choosing a unique sensory cue. It could be a scent like a specific essential oil you diffuse only while studying. It could be a certain type of background music or ambient sound. It could even be a textured object you hold while reviewing key concepts. The important rule is consistency. Only use that cue during learning sessions. Never use it casually. Over time, your brain begins to associate that specific sensory input with learning and memory retrieval. For example, you might wear a specific wristband or bracelet while studying. You train your brain to link that physical sensation to focus. Later, when you wear that same item during a test or presentation, your brain gets the subtle signal. This is a focus state. Recall begins more fluidly because the body and mind are already conditioned to respond. Spies often took this further. Some would train in specific environments like certain rooms with distinctive lighting or smells, so that when they had to recall the information, recreating even a small part of the original sensory experience would spark memory. This was especially useful when operating under disguise, where memory couldn't fail. The brain needed shortcuts and sensory cues. Were those shortcuts? Even taste can be used. A particular type of tea, a specific snack, or even a flavored lip balm, anything that the brain can latch onto. The more unique the cue, the better. The trick is to avoid overlapping that cue with unrelated activities. If your study music becomes your gym playlist or your background noise while scrolling social media, it loses its effect. It must remain special and tied to learning only. Neuropriming isn't just effective, it's surprisingly simple. It transforms your learning experience from a dry, passive process into a multi-layered memory system. By engaging your body as well as your brain, you create memory hooks that go beyond simple repetition. You build a memory that is alive, connected to sound, smell, movement, and even emotion. This is why elite learners from spies to top athletes use multisensory triggers in their training. Because when you give the brain more ways to remember, it gives you faster, more reliable access when you need it most. One of the most powerful memory techniques ever developed, and one that continues to be used by intelligence agencies, competitive memory champions, and top-performing individuals, is the memory palace, also known as the method of Loki. This technique is ancient, dating back to the Greeks and Romans, but its application in modern intelligence work shows just how timeless and effective it truly is. The idea is simple, but incredibly effective. You mentally place information you want to remember into specific familiar locations like the rooms of your house, a walk through your neighborhood, or even the path you take from your bed to your front door. Your brain already knows these locations inside and out. You've seen them 1,000 times. By assigning pieces of information to objects or spots within those spaces, you give your brain a visual and spatial hook that makes recall almost effortless. Let's say you're trying to memorize the steps in a negotiation tactic. You might picture walking into your kitchen and seeing a giant stopwatch on the counter that represents timing. Then you see a chessboard on the table representing strategy. Then a loudspeaker blasting music symbolizing communication. Each item represents a key point. When it's time to recall, you just walk through your kitchen in your mind, and the items and the ideas they represent come back instantly. Spies use this technique to memorize long sequences of numbers, identities, languages, and even entire briefings without writing a single word down. Why? Because they can't afford to carry physical notes. Getting caught with information could be a death sentence. But a memory palace can't be taken from you. It's invisible, completely mental, and always with you. The secret to making it work is exaggeration and emotion. The images you place in each room should be big, colorful, weird, and even a little emotional. The stranger the visual, the stronger the recall. A pile of burning passports, a floating stopwatch dripping with ink, or a cat wearing glasses sitting at a desk, the weirder it is, the more your brain locks onto it. Now, while the memory palace helps you store and recall information in powerful, organized chunks, there's another technique that addresses a different aspect of how the brain learns: rapid topic switching. Most of us were taught to study one topic at a time for hours, but this method can cause fatigue, boredom, and shallow processing. The CIA discovered that switching between topics in short, intense bursts, usually 10 to 15 minutes each, forces the brain to stay alert and actively form new neural connections. It creates a dynamic learning experience where the brain constantly shifts gears, making associations between seemingly unrelated pieces of information. This is how real learning happens, not just remembering, but connecting ideas across disciplines. For example, a trainee might study a foreign language for 10 minutes, then shift to map reading, then to a tactical scenario, then to cultural customs, and then loop back again. Instead of becoming mentally exhausted from one subject, their brain stays refreshed and engaged. Each switch acts like a reset, improving focus and deepening comprehension. This method is rooted in how the brain naturally works. We're not designed for long, monotonous focus. We think in jumps fast, associative bursts of activity. Rapid switching mirrors that rhythm. And when we return to a topic after a break, the brain has had time to process it subconsciously, leading to better retention. In practical terms, you can structure your learning like a circuit. Set a timer for 10 minutes and rotate through 3 to 5 subjects or skills. Keep doing loops. Don't worry if it feels scattered. At first, your brain is adapting. It's learning to hold multiple threads of knowledge at once. And just like a spy needs to go from language translation to street surveillance to quick memory, recall, you too begin to develop mental agility that goes far beyond traditional study methods. Together, the memory palace and rapid topic switching form a 1-2 punch. One method helps you store information in a structured way, while the other helps you build connections and keep your mind flexible. This is the kind of training that creates not just better learners, but sharper thinkers, and that's exactly what the world's top intelligence agencies were after. Whoa. One of the most overlooked but incredibly powerful tools in the learning arsenal is mental visualization. While it might sound simple, visualization is more than just imagining things. It's about constructing vivid, multi-dimensional mental images tied to the information you want to remember. This technique has been used for decades by elite athletes, performers, and yes, intelligence operatives. For spies, visualization was a survival skill. They had to memorize faces, escape routes, surveillance patterns, and codes, often in high-pressure environments with no room for error. Their training involved building vivid mental movies, complete scenes that they could walk through in their minds to practice and perfect their actions before they ever stepped into danger. Visualization activates the same parts of the brain as real experience. When you imagine yourself doing something like walking into a room, reciting a speech, or solving a puzzle, your brain fires off signals nearly identical to actually doing it. This strengthens neural pathways and builds muscle memory for the mind. And the more senses you involve in your mental image, the more powerful the recall becomes. Let's say you're learning a complex concept like how a combustion engine works. Instead of just reading about it, you close your eyes and picture every part of the engine in motion. You see the pistons firing, you hear the spark ignite the fuel, you feel the vibration of the machine. That multi-sensory image imprints on your brain much more deeply than just words on a page. For CIA trainees, this method was used constantly. Before a mission, they would visualize the layout of a location, the sequence of events, and all possible outcomes not once, but over and over until it became second nature. They weren't just rehearsing information, they were rehearsing reality. That mental repetition helped them stay calm, precise, and responsive, even when real chaos unfolded. In everyday life, visualization can supercharge any kind of learning. If you're preparing for a presentation, imagine yourself standing confidently in front of the audience, speaking smoothly, clicking through slides with ease. If you're studying for an exam, picture yourself flipping through the test paper, seeing the questions, and calmly recalling the answers. Your brain starts to believe that experience is familiar, and familiarity leads to confidence and better performance. There's also another layer to this: emotional visualization. When you connect an emotion to the image you create, the memory becomes even more powerful. That's why visualizing success, visualizing danger, or even visualizing personal meaning behind the information can create stronger memory bonds. A spy might visualize what failure would look like getting caught, compromising the mission to create emotional urgency around remembering details. You can apply the same principle in your studies by imagining the consequences of forgetting or the rewards of remembering. The key is to be specific. Don't just think about studying, build a scene. See the page, feel the pen, hear the voice, watch the idea in motion. Make your images strange, memorable, and emotionally charged. The more vivid the mental scene, the more your brain will treat it as real and store it as such. Mental visualization isn't about daydreaming. It's about mental rehearsal, deep encoding, and activating the full power of your brain's imagination to master reality. And just like the spies who train to stay one step ahead, you can use this tool to move through challenges, presentations, and exams with a sense of control, clarity, and calm, because in your mind, you've already been there. Sometimes, the smallest things can unlock the biggest memories. Intelligence agencies discovered that if you attach learning to a consistent sensory signal, you can train your brain to recall that information faster and with greater clarity. This is known as sensory recall, triggering a method that leverages your brain's deep connection between the senses and memory. The idea is simple. While you're learning something important, you intentionally pair it with a distinct sensory element. A smell, a color, a sound, a taste, or a texture. Then, when you want to recall that information later, you reintroduce the same sensory trigger. It acts like a key, unlocking the memory that was stored alongside it. Imagine a trainee studying intelligence protocols while a specific type of incense is burning something strong and unusual, like sandalwood or orange blossom. Days later, when they're in the field and that same scent is subtly reintroduced, the protocols come flooding back. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. The parts of your brain responsible for memory, emotion, and sensory processing, like the hippocampus and amygdala, are tightly connected. That's why certain songs instantly take you back to a childhood moment, or a single smell can stir emotions from years ago. You can use this method easily in your own life. Choose a specific element and use it only while learning. For example, a cinnamon-scented candle. Play a lo-fi background music loop. Drink a unique herbal tea. Even wear a textured bracelet or chew a certain flavor of gum. The key is consistency and exclusivity. Only use the trigger when you're learning, so the brain begins to associate it exclusively with focused study. Later, when you're taking a test, preparing for a presentation, or trying to recall the info, reintroducing that sensory input can trigger recall far more efficiently than mental effort alone. But while sensory cues help with precision recall, there's an even deeper method that takes this to the next level: immersion learning. Instead of adding small sensory triggers, you turn your entire environment into a learning ecosystem. This is how spies train to pick up foreign languages and cultural nuances rapidly. They weren't reading textbooks, they were surrounded by the target culture every moment of the day. Language wasn't just something they studied, it was something they lived. Immersion learning means surrounding yourself with the content you're trying to absorb. If you're learning Spanish, change your phone language, watch Spanish shows, put post-it notes on household items with Spanish labels, and speak out loud to yourself as if narrating your actions. Your goal is to flood your senses and daily routine with the target subject until it becomes a natural part of your thinking. For intelligence trainees, this meant total simulation. Their rooms were decorated with foreign newspapers, signs in another language. Even the food and background noise matched the culture they were studying. This total sensory immersion accelerated learning because the brain began to connect language, gesture, tone, and meaning in real time, not as abstract concepts, but as living, breathing experiences. You can do the same with any subject. If you're learning science, fill your walls with diagrams, watch documentary clips while eating, and talk about what you've learned with friends. If you're mastering a technical skill, create a space where the tools, visuals, and even sounds match the environment where you'll apply it. Over time, your brain stops treating the subject as study time. It becomes part of your identity, your routine, your sensory world. Combining sensory triggers with immersive learning transforms your environment into a 24/7 training ground. Learning becomes passive and active at the same time. You absorb it while you're focused, and you reinforce it while you're relaxed. And just like spies who train to operate in unfamiliar territories, your brain learns to make the unfamiliar feel familiar until it no longer feels like studying at all, but simply living in the world you're trying to master. To tie all these advanced learning techniques together, the CIA didn't just rely on random exercises. They used a structured system, a learning blueprint designed to build memory, focus, and performance layer by layer. The result was a powerful 4-week training cycle that gradually reprogrammed the brain for accelerated learning. This schedule wasn't just about what to learn, it was about how and when to train your brain using proven cognitive principles. Each week focused on a specific layer of mental conditioning, building a foundation of deep focus, rapid recall, and adaptive thinking. Week 1. Theta Wave Learning Sleep Programming. The first week is about planting the seeds. You begin by introducing new knowledge in a calm, low-resistance brain state, ideally just before sleep. This is when your brain naturally enters the theta wave range, making it more receptive to suggestion and memory encoding. During this week, your job is to focus on absorbing the material passively and gently, no pressure, no overthinking. Listen to audio lessons while falling asleep. Read keynotes before bed. Keep your learning focused, short, and repetitive. This is the mental download phase, where your brain begins to accept new information as part of its internal architecture. You're not forcing retention, you're seeding it. Week 2. Chaos conditioning. Cognitive pressure. Now that the material is in your brain, you need to stress test it. Week 2 shifts to active recall under mild forms of pressure. Introduce distractions into your study sessions, background noise, time constraints, or physical discomfort. Use flashcards while pacing. Recite lessons with a timer. Try retrieving facts while music plays or while standing on one foot. The goal isn't perfection, it's conditioning. You're training your mind to stay sharp and responsive even when the environment isn't perfect. This builds cognitive resilience, a core trait in espionage training. By the end of week 2, your brain should begin to associate stress not with panic, but with focus. Week 3. Sensory anchoring memory, palace construction. Now that your brain can recall under pressure, you reinforce the information using 2 techniques: sensory cues and spatial visualization. Start attaching sensory triggers to your learning: smells, sounds, flavors, textures. Use the same scent during each session. Listen to a specific track while reviewing notes. Chew a distinctive gum. This creates associative memory. At the same time, begin building a memory palace. Place core concepts into imaginary locations within your home or a familiar space. Visualize walking through that space, retrieving each concept along the way. This dual-layered technique locks information into both your sensory and spatial memory networks, 2 of the strongest memory systems the brain has. Week 4. Rapid rotation integration. In the final week, your goal is integration. You now rotate between different topics or skills every 10 to 15 minutes. This forces your brain to link concepts and stay agile. Practice switching from one subject to another, as if jumping between tasks in the real world. For example, spend 15 minutes on language review, then 15 on a logic puzzle, then 15 on technical knowledge. Repeat the cycle. This rapid switching builds adaptive thinking, enhances creative connections, and keeps the brain alert and flexible, exactly the traits CIA agents are trained to rely on in the field. By the end of this 4-week cycle, your brain has gone through a complete transformation. You've planted information during low-resistance brain states, tested it under pressure, locked it in with sensory and spatial memory, and finally trained your mind to jump between concepts with speed and clarity. You've not just memorized information, you've rebuilt how your brain handles learning itself. This is more than just a schedule. It's a framework for turning average learners into high-performance thinkers, and it works not because it's extreme, but because it aligns perfectly with how the brain is designed to learn. Whether you're a student, a professional, or someone looking to break mental limits, the 4-week CIA learning model can become your roadmap to real mastery 1 week at a time.